Right, here we are in step 2 of John's sourdough with mates. Anyway, enough joking aside. I've got some ingredients laid out for you here. I've got some strong white, it's just called baker's flour, it's plain flour. I've got some psyllium husk. I've got some organic stone ground flour, which I bought in Henry's if you live here, and a little bit of salt, some sourdough starter, and some lukewarm water. This is a fairly simple process for this part of it. As I said, this is step 2. I think there's 8 steps. So we will start off. We've got 400 grams of the plain baker's flour in the bowl. I've got 100 grams of the organic stone ground flour, plain flour again. In it goes. You don't have to have that, but it adds a little bit of fiber to it, as well as the psyllium husk. I just have 2 tablespoons of psyllium husk in there. That goes. That helps to bring the dough together and make it easier to work with later on. And I've got 1 tablespoon, a flat tablespoon of salt, just for extra flavor, and it also helps bring the gluten together, apparently. Learned that from a master baker before. Right, so that's the dry ingredients before I get my hands in there. In here I've got 350 grams of lukewarm water. Now we will use extra water later on, but I tend to bring it in with my hands. Here we have our starter. And we fed the starter this morning during step 1, and we marked it on the bowl or on the container here where we were. So that's where it was, and it has risen well. There's a light vinegar flavor of that, and as you can see, there's some nice bubbles on it, so that's a good active starter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add approximately, no science to this, but approximately 3/4 of this starter to the lukewarm water. And as we put it in, you'll see that it will all float on the top. Beautiful. So again, there's about that much left. I'll just cover that off. And that stays there until we cook tomorrow. So don't feed it tonight. We'll feed that tomorrow morning. So with the knife here, I'm just going to gently, with the flat knife, I'm going to break this up in the water a little bit, so it makes kind of like a milk. Doesn't have to be exact, but I'm just using it to break it up. Now we'll just leave that now for a moment. Back to my dry ingredients. You don't have to sieve these, but it is important to mix them and aerate them. Sometimes baker's flour gets some flour kind of lumps in it, tiny little lumps of flour. So you just need to get those out with your fingers. So I'm just getting those out. Mixing it up. I can feel the salt go to the bottom of the bowl. There's a little bit of a lump there. There we go, good enough. Now it's going to give this sourdough water, milky kind of texture, a bit of a stir, and just chuck it all in. So it's going to start to bring it together just with the knife. And it will start to look a little bit dry in a moment. That's okay. Try and get as much of that off the sides. And it's starting to come together. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit of extra water. This is just to wet my hands. If you put your dry hands in here, it'll just stick to your hands like glue. I'm just going to wet my hand, and I'm just going to bring it in to the middle like this. This is lukewarm water. So I'm just going to bring it in. As you can see here, it's starting to come together. I'm not really kneading it. All I'm doing is really getting the dry bits of the flour all mixed together with water. And this is where the extra water comes from. This is why Technically, there's probably about 370 or 80 mils of water in the entire thing, but it helps to bring it in my hands, because as you can see, it stops my hands from getting sticky. So I finished mixing that up, and as you can see there, it's all coming together. And just with a little flexible spoon like this, I'm just going to scoop it down off the sides of the bowl and just bring it in to the middle like this. And I'm just gently turning the bowl as I go. So it's just to make sure there's no dry bits underneath. You can see like that, there's no dry bits. And now it all scooped down. Now it's going to sit here for 30 minutes. So I'm going to cover it. I've got a damp linen cloth. Linen is good because it doesn't leave any fibers. It's going to be covered. Put a plate over it just to keep the moisture of the cloth in, and it has to sit there now for 30 minutes. So we'll come back to step 3 in 30 minutes time, where we start to fold the bread. We don't need the bread at all. It's all folding process. It's about 6:30. We'll be back shortly in a half an hour.